So this is the second part of our article marketing training series where we're going to cover specifically article marketing basics because this is really the cornerstone of what we use in ourselves in our own websites each and every day to help build rank and build traffic to our websites day in and day out. Now, of course, many of you already listening to this are very familiar with article marketing. This is something that you already do on a regular basis, but I really want to highlight some of the caveats that you run into with normal article marketing. And as you stick with the video, we're going to present a really novel, powerful technique to market your article content. Now, I love article marketing. It's just by definition a method or practice by which an end user submits their content for use by web publishers in return for the underlying website promotion. So I give you my content, you allow me to keep a link on your website. So in a simplistic form, I have a website, I syndicate my content, other websites pick it up, so Joe, Sally, and Billy all take my content, republish it on their website. As soon as they do that, I get backlinks back to my website. Now, the beauty of article marketing in particular is that you're controlling the content, you're controlling the message that's put out there that's associated with your site and your name, but more importantly, you control the backlinks and the anchor text that's used. So you can link with any anchor text you want to any page that you want, any time that you want with article marketing. So overall, article marketing has two major goals, and this is the goals of most, if not all, link building techniques, and they're both traffic to your website and rank. Now, when I say this, you can't just consider article marketing as an SEO tool. You also have to consider that a good quality article submitted out to the search engines, to article directories, to any resources is going to push traffic back to your site just from the sheer amount of interest and clicks through the article itself. So not only does it provide that additional rank benefit that we talked about in the previous video, but it also provides single-click traffic here and there from everybody who's actually reading your content and getting value from it. Now, in general, when we're talking about articles, I wanted to just slap up a quick screenshot just to show you a general article format. Now, I pulled this from eZine Articles, and the title is How to Stop Stuttering. So, first and foremost, you're thinking this has to be this targeting the term stop stuttering, which makes a lot of sense. So the general article format is a title. I mean, basically just like any web page. Think of an article like a web page. The title is optimized for the keyword. So when we're thinking about the on-page factors, write your content and structure your content to cater towards them. The same can be said for the article body. Keep your content in the at least 400 or more range in terms of words, and write it in such a way that people can easily read, easily skim it. This is a pretty good example. Lots of breaks, lots of easy reading, no super complicated formatting or anything. I could skim this quickly because most people, in all honesty, are going to skim your content. Write with a keyword focus. So make sure that if this is targeted around stop stuttering, that we make sure that we're using that phrase throughout the content so we do maintain a certain level of density that's in keeping with what's happening for that term, for that niche. Now, last and of course not least for article marketing is the author box. So in return for allowing you to put your content on their site, the reward is keeping this author box intact and having these links pointing back to your website. So you can see based on our previous discussion that Robert Johnson wants to rank for the term stop stuttering because he's optimized it in the title, in the context, and he's anchor linking back towards his page using that term. Now, one thing to keep in mind with your author box, don't always just link to your homepage, and we'll talk about this more in later slides, but not just linking to your homepage is a critical aspect of really making article marketing and link building in general work for you. So let's say you already have some content. Most people will say if you have content, article content, what you need to do is syndicate that content. And what that really means is that you're publishing that content to a third party, either a directory or a blog or a social media website, where it's made available for other webmasters to pick it up and republish it on their own websites. Now, in 9 times out of 10, you've probably worked with article directories in relationship to your article marketing specifically. So when we're talking about these article directories, I'll name off the laundry list of article directories that most of you are probably already familiar with. But this is generally where 9 times out of 10 people will go to submit their article content. This is good and this is bad. It's good in a sense that they're very strong, powerful, established websites. It's bad in a sense that it's literally a directory. And as you see with the trend in Google these days, directories are essentially being devalued to some extent in how Google relates to them as a valuable backlink. But it is still used as a resource for webmasters to source new content, which is why you cannot ignore article directories. Also, blogs are a great source. If you find niche-specific blogs that talk about your product lines or whatever you sell, you can approach them, see if they'll allow submission of content. If you run your own blog, you can publish your article content there. But the one caveat for that in particular is if you're republishing your content on your blog, make sure you're keeping content specific to your website in one area and then content that you syndicate out to another area, because as I'll point out later in the video, once you are syndicating content in multiple sources, you will run into issues with Google and it basically selecting out which is the primary or the most important version of that article and basically filtering the other ones out. The same can be said for social media websites. There's millions of them out there. Places that you can submit your own content that's external of your site and earn a backlink. So Squidoo would be an example. So the actual practice of syndication when we're talking about article directories is utilizing services like iSnare or Brad's article submitter to actually get your content out to those directories in mass. So this is a good way to automate this process, which is again why article marketing is such a powerful technique. It's scalable and it can be automated. So the normal workflow for article marketing is basically just getting an article, targeting towards a specific keyword which you want to rank for, submitting that content to major article directories, and then webmasters come by, pick up the content, and it results in a backlink to your site. So this is pretty much how we've been doing it for years, but what I'm here to say is that there's another way. There's a better way to do this and leverage your article content with seolinkvine. And as we get through the video and as we talk about some of the caveats of submitting to article directories and some of the issues that you run into that make this not as powerful as it could be, you'll really understand why we created seolinkvine in the first place, and you'll really see how you can better leverage your article content for more traffic, which leads to more revenue. Now, everybody asks which directories. Now, I mentioned iSnare in particular, but on top of iSnare, there's actually a couple directories which I would recommend personally to hand submit to or outsource hand submission. And this is a great list to start from. So look at these, hand submit to these where you can to really get them in the right location. Now, something to keep in mind with these types of directories and these types of submission processes is that more is not always better. You'll see that this directory list is actually considerably smaller than some of the other directory lists that are published out there. That's because these directories are good, they do pass rank, they do send traffic, and those are the main criteria that I'll look at day in and day out to evaluate whether or not it's worth my time. Quality is always going to be evaluated over quantity. Now, if you start submitting to mass amounts of directories, what if, sometime down the line, one of those directories that you're submitting in gets a penalty, and then you have 50 articles in that directory? That penalty could track back to you and cause you issues. So stick with the good ones, stick with the ones that are definitely going to give you the least amount of risk over the long term. The one thing that really you want to keep in mind is that you want to stay under the radar when using techniques like this. Now, article marketing has the potential to push a lot of backlinks back to your website over time. Now, it's important to note that if you're looking at this video right now and you haven't done article marketing or you haven't done a lot of aggressive link building, is that your site has a quote-unquote set link building rate based on Google's view of your website. So if you're an existing website, you've been around for 5 years, Google looks at your site and how it's grown over time and says, okay, well, you've gotten 2 links a week for the entire time that I've been watching your website. And then all of a sudden you see article marketing, it's the greatest thing ever, and you submit 100 articles a week for 6 months. All of a sudden you're getting backlinks coming out the wazoo, and Google's looking at you and they're like, something's not right here. I don't understand what you're doing. There's a flag that's going up, and as soon as the flag goes up, that's when you're going to run into long-term issues with Google, really looking at your site with a fine-tooth comb. And I don't think, and I personally would attest that I don't want that happening, and I don't want to raise that red flag and draw attention to myself. So maintain a normal growth rate and maintain whatever you set that growth rate at over time. Now, this last one is a very, very important one. And that's varying your anchor text from article to article. So if I submit 10 articles and every article is pointing to my homepage, I want to make sure that, instead of saying blue widgets for every single anchor text, I'm going to say blue widgets for one, and I'm going to say buy blue widget or buy widgets for another one. I don't want to use the exact same anchor text every single time I have a backlink to every single page. So by doing that, I'm going to raise yet another flag to Google that may result in an over-optimization penalty. And these do exist, and we see these happening. So with article marketing in particular, keep an eye on and make sure that you're varying your anchor text, you're mixing up the keywords that you do, and keep that in mind as well when you're considering the amount of work that's necessary to actually get a good rank from article marketing. Now, reusing the same anchor text, as I said, to the same exact page will actually result in a Google penalty, and I can validate this. I've seen it time and time again with clients. This shows up. This is a real deal problem, so vary your anchor text. The other thing that you should really be doing is looking at backlinks themselves over time, and if you're using a tool like SEO Elite, this becomes very easy for you to do. So you can actually go in and run backlink analysis on your website to look at what's actually happening to my backlink profile. Are those anchor text links showing up? If you use SEO Elite, you can see that, but if you don't have it, you could use sites like Yahoo Site Explorer to actually just monitor backlinks showing up, but you won't necessarily know the anchor text. And the anchor text is really going to be the driver for rank. One thing about article marketing, and actually there's a couple things about article marketing that actually do become problematic for you. And those of you that are familiar with this, and some of this information is being circulated quite a bit more now than it was in the past, is that Google definitely ranks links based off of proximity on pages and placement on pages differently. So in this example, I've taken a screenshot from Wikipedia, for instance, and I'm looking at all these links on this particular page, and I know just from experience that these navigation links are weighted significantly less in terms of the value and their consideration and how it reflects rank on this page or the pages that it's sending to. So a list or a navigational list of links is going to be basically devalued in terms of Google and how effective it's going to be and how useful it's going to be. So if you were, in theory, getting links on another website here, that's not so great for you. Second, lists of links, just like in navigation, carry less weight. So in this example, a track shoe link from Wikipedia, well, it's good, it's not as good as some other links. And the perfect example in here are these in-context links. These links are weighted heavier because of, in terms of coding, so since Google is a program, there's a high text to code ratio for these types of links. So it's obvious to Google that they're within the content itself. Now, if we get really fancy, there's actually a proximity aspect for links as well, so that the first link on any page, regardless of what it is, tends to be the most valued link. So when Google's evaluating the code of the page, the very first link that it encounters gets the most value and the most weight in terms of how it's going to push back rank to wherever that link goes. So these links that are in context within the body of this actual excerpt are going to be more valuable than these links and these links. Now, what does this mean for you as an article marketer? Now, what's interesting about it is because of the proximity and the placement of about the author boxes, those links tend to carry a lot less weight. There's a much higher code to text ratio because that's a very small blip of content. It's placed very low on the page, which tends to give it less importance in terms of Google, because Google makes the assumption that higher up on the page, more important content, just like news sources, gets placed first in content rather than getting placed last. So you do have a slight disadvantage just by placement of article content, and the idea that about the author links always have to be placed low on the page, and that also kind of devalues you in terms of how often you're going to get click-throughs and actual just traffic coming in through reading your content itself. So that's kind of a fairly significant issue with article marketing. But the bigger issue that most people run into is duplicate content. Now, one thing that I want to stress is that there is no duplicate content filter in Google. Google has said this themselves. They've actually published it on their blog to say duplicate content filters do not exist. Now, what does exist is competition. Now, competition filters will weed out the good versus the bad. So instead of thinking about it as a duplicate content filter, in actuality what it is Joe Schmo wants to rank for the term running shoes, and so does Steve Smith. So both sites get evaluated for the value of their link profiles, their strength, their authority, and the guy that has the better of the two websites is going to rank for running shoes. It has nothing to do with the fact that Joe and Steve have the same exact content, but it has everything to do with the fact that this site is more valuable than this site over here. Now, if that's true, then what it appears as though is that Google's filtering out one versus the other, but in actuality, all it's doing is it's putting competitive filters, or it's evaluating the competition for that particular keyword and eliminating the weaker party. Now, what does this mean for you in terms of article content? So let's say you've taken your article and you've syndicated that article. So the bunch of times I get picked up, and these are all different websites, I'm getting all these backlinks pointing to my website. But the reality is that each one of these websites has republished the same exact content. Now, while initially these sites may get indexed and may get listed in Google, over time what's going to happen is that Google will look at and they'll evaluate this entire pool of people that have republished the exact same content. And what it'll do is it'll say okay, all these pages are trying to optimize for this term. Which is the best, most optimized page for this term, and which is the best site that has republished this content for this term? And it's going to filter out all these, and you're actually going to lose backlinks because of the fact that Google's going to remove them from the index, basically because they don't need to be there from a competitive standpoint. Now, if I had to say anything about article marketing, this is the biggest issue that webmasters run into in making article marketing as strong as it could possibly be. The fact that even though you're syndicating your content, you're spreading it out as good and as effectively as you possibly can, you're always going to run into this duplicate content type issue where competition is going to weed out the sheer number of backlinks that could be generated from your content. So how do we maintain sustainable article promotions? How do we actually take the article content that we have, leverage it as good as possible, and get a lot more backlinks out of a single article instead of ultimately ending up with very few which are higher value? I want the high value ones, and I want all of them. I want every single backlink that I can get from every single article that I write. And now we have the answer with seolinkvine. So stay tuned to the next video and we'll talk exactly about why it's going to help take your article promotions to the next level.